Hello and welcome to this Post-Carbon Cities of Tomorrow POCACITO webinar. Obviously the last webinar of the year, pushing it pretty close to the end of the year. It's already December 21st and I'm very happy that we have Klaus Hoppe here with us today. I just want to say this up front right away. So we had a little technical challenge, and so we won't have Klaus on the webcam, but his microphone is working, and as you can see, his screen sharing is also working, so we'll have some visual interaction and you can hear and talk to him. So overall today we will keep this very interactive. I want to encourage you to join the discussion. You have several ways of doing this. You can communicate via the chat function. If you haven't seen that yet, it's in the control panel. In the lower section of the control panel, you can type in messages, and then hopefully I'll see these messages and then can actually either read these out if there are questions, but I will also try to give you the microphone, which we can do. And the other option of doing this is to raise your hands. You can do that, or ask a question via the control panel as well. So try these functions. I'll try to be attentive and responsive. Please forgive me if I don't see this right away, because of course I'll also try to follow what Klaus is saying and what Klaus is doing. And but we'll try to keep this open and engaged. Again, so Klaus went with me. My name is Max Grönig. If you haven't met me, I think everybody on the line has met me probably. We went to 3 cities in the west of the United States this September. We went to Las Vegas, to Denver, and to Phoenix. And together with a colleague also from Germany, from the city of Hamburg, Ursula Lünzmann-Pielke, which we'll see in a webinar early next year. And we will talk more about her experiences, but today we'll focus on Klaus' very personal impressions from that tour, and also his reflections now that he's had some time to think about it, what happened there, and also maybe come up with new ideas for the next year. Just wanted to say very quickly what we at Ecologic Institute have in the pipeline for next year in the POCACITO program. So we have another exciting lineup of cities where we will engage in 2018 and 2019, in addition to the current or past post-carbon cities of tomorrow. And in the US, this will be Atlanta, Baltimore, Milwaukee, New Orleans, Phoenix, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and San Antonio. And we paired these cities with very interesting cities in Europe. Atlanta will be paired with Munich, Baltimore will be paired with Rotterdam, Milwaukee will be paired with Ljubljana in Slovenia. If you don't know, it's one of the lesser known cities maybe. New Orleans, or Nouvelle Orleans, is of course matched with a French city, so it's going to be Marseille. Phoenix with Stockholm, and then we have Pittsburgh paired with Zagreb. Pittsburgh has quite a Croatian minority, and so it's an interesting connection there. St. Louis with Warsaw, and then San Antonio with Madrid. So that just on that. You've seen in the announcement for the webinar that Klaus is from the city of Freiburg. And Freiburg, of course, is the poster child city in Germany, if I may say so, for urban sustainability, and has been a front mover, or the really #1 city for both climate change mitigation, for mobility, and also for the energy transition, but also a lot for citizen participation and the processes that link citizens, city administration, and companies. So thank you, Klaus, for taking time so close to the holidays. And I really am glad, for one, that you joined us on the trip, which was a very great trip, but also that you have thought a little bit about your impressions from that tour and are willing to share some of these experiences. So I know 3 very different cities, but if you can, please go ahead, and you're also free to focus more on one city than on the others. So what were your experiences, and what were your thoughts now in retrospect about this trip?
Yeah, Max, thank you very much for having me in this webinar. So I'm not quite used to webinars where I'm not able to see anyone who is participating. So this is I would like to say hello to all the participants, although we cannot see and until now cannot speak to each other. And please, any question you have, interrupt me. If I'm going in the wrong direction, stop me. Yeah, let's have a discussion whenever you want to. And I really liked our trip, our 11 days with, I think, 12 or 13 lectures in the different cities in the warm climate, of southwestern, let's say, America. And I have brought, as Max asked me about my impression, I have brought some pictures that I took during our trip, and I would like briefly to show them to you with a brief comment on each of them, so you might have as well a visual impression about what I experienced there. Yeah, and then Max, you can ask me as well some questions on which topics I should focus, because before I start, there are a lot of similarities that we have in our cities. Yeah, we have a lot of differences, of course, because of our culture, of our legal system, our political system, etc. But there are a lot of things we have in common, and this is one of the things that I mostly recognize, that we are all dealing with the same issues on different levels with different experience, and so we have really a lot in common. So I will start with this picture. This I moderated a conference on beginning of November in the framework of the COP23 conferences in Bonn. This was a so-called twin conference with cities that are twinned or going to be twinned, and with as well some American cities, because there is a follow-up project which is called urban it's urban, I forgot the name in detail, but it's about industrial legacy cities. So all cities with an industrial background, and how can they move forward and use all the assets that they have or they don't have into a brighter future. And there are German cities, there are Chinese cities, and as well American cities, and they will meet again in the next month or in the next half year, and so share as well their experience. And I was doing that and did the moderating, and in my experience as the head of the energy department and sustainable energy action plan, I had different roles. And as you can see, this was the picture of all the participants. And just briefly, it was said everybody should gather out of the building. This is an old coal mining area in Germany, but nobody asked them to get together so that the photograph could have a good picture of them. So they asked me, and you can see me up there doing this job, gather the people around to have a good picture. But that was that. So this is the first impression from Las Vegas. We went to the university, to the research center, and it was obvious that solar is one big asset that you have, especially in these part of the States, because there's much more solar than we have. And if we can do solar, you can do that much better than we can. And of course, not everything is working, yeah, always fine in the right way. So there is a information display, but unfortunately there was no information displayed. And this is something which happens everywhere. Sometimes it does just not work the way it should. And we know that, yeah, it's, if we talk about energy, it's more than just keeping the lights on. It's about how do we produce these energies and in a sustainable way. And it's not just energy. So this is what we saw as well in Las Vegas. This is an indoor garden organic supercenter with hydroponic. So there are a lot of things going on as well in Las Vegas, and this is the new city hall. So they are committed to solar, and they show it outside, which was really impressive how they deal with their how people appreciate the city, or that they call them Sin City. Yeah, so this is about positive sin, because this is about using solar. And of course, it's not always just these issues. Yeah, there at the same time there was a workshop on homelessness. So everything is happening at the same time, and the world is changing so fast. And as fast as we arrived in Las Vegas, we had to move on to Denver. And this was the first thing I saw in Denver at the airport. There's, yeah, you see different cities, different issues. And they had a doghouse competition using, yeah, solar. So make doghouses renewable. Of course, we have to do more than just making doghouses renewable, yeah. But this was at the airport when we came, and what I saw as well is that, and I never recognized that as well, cities like Denver, you have a water issue there. And this is why people start to think about, or have to do that, because there's a regulation, yeah, to reduce the irrigation of their gardens. So they did it like that. And of course, what I found as well is that people, especially in the States, like football or soccer, as we call it too. And we can learn a lot from soccer, from my perspective, as a team sport, if it comes to our municipalities and our silos and our different departments. So how can we better work together? And of course, I would really appreciate seeing you sometime in Freiburg, because there is a lot to show, from the mobility and the bicycle policy to the overall city development planning and energy planning within the city. And there are things happening if you just look around and check what people are pinning on different boards. And this is about, yeah, sharing program for fresh food started in Denver this year. Quite interesting. And of course, if you go to Denver, you have to see the Rocky Mountain Institute and Emery Lovins. And he showed where he grew his bananas in his up into the mountains building, yeah, where he's producing more energy than he is using. And everything is about energy, and beyond energy, it's about how we manage energy. And we were at the fortunately and by chance at a so-called e-source is the name of the company, and a former spin-off of the Rocky Mountain Institute. They are consulting and advising all the energy power companies in the States. So there was a lot of information on, yeah, that although some states are going away from the Paris Agreement, yeah, and the one, you should not mention his name, yeah, there are a lot of companies and cities really committing to this issue, because they see that this is not just an environmental issue, that's as well an ecological and economical issue for them and for everyone. And there are a lot of things on the horizon, like those smart homes, and we have to be careful about that, because what is smart about a home that in the end uses more electricity than before? So we have to be careful when we check that. And yeah, and we have to see that the grids will look different in the future, especially if we introduce more renewable energies, if it's wind or if it's solar. So our intelligence is needed to manage these networks. Quite an interesting issue. And yeah, prosumers, the people are called then prosumers and no more consumers. This is a very complex material. It's not complicated, but complex, and we need a lot of experience and knowledge to manage that. And what we met as well is that, yeah, that I'm a German, yeah, and that we went to a German school, and there was this display, and I was quite smiling at this, because Austria said that it looks like German, but it sounds like music. So, you know, we are always competing between the countries. And when we went back on our way to Phoenix, this is a huge PV plant near the Denver airport. And then we went down to Phoenix, and it was not just sunny, it was 100 Fahrenheit, which was quite acceptable. It was more than 132 weeks before, but solar, you see, always is a topic, and you can use solar for shading and as well to produce electricity. This is one of the parking lots near university and the university football stadium. And it is a lot about, yeah, how we advertise or how we promote our issues, because I think if we are clever and promote them in a good way, then renewable energies will make its way. There's no other, I think there's no other way. So, and still in cities like Las Vegas and Phoenix, there are already bicycle renting stations. And of course, it is an issue when it's very hot. And we met a lot of nice people as well from the Mexican, which celebrated their 201st anniversary in Phoenix. We went into your incredible nature, yeah, and see that there's a lot of awareness on this. And last not least, well, before we left, I just saw, just by chance, watched briefly a CNN report about what can we do about climate change, especially after what happened in Houston. And people in Houston, they say, or the chief resilience executive said, never ever will we do zoning plan in Houston. That's not what we want to do. So I was really amazed that he's telling something like that after 14 days after they had a huge flood. But that's sometimes how things happen. And and there was a researcher, and she said that there are different benefits if we do climate action. And one is, of course, if we stick to fossil fuels, this will hurt the planet. This is an ultimate truth. But on the other side, if we start to work with clean energy, this is a tremendous investment in the economy, especially in the local and regional economy. And this is something what I really experienced here in Freiburg, that there is a lot going on in the regional and local economy. And by chance, in this morning, I met a colleague from Fort Collins, which is, I don't know, 1 hour, one and a half hours north of Denver. And he's here in Freiburg with his family. And we started to talk to each other because we met briefly in Denver. And we were talking a lot about regional energy, regional economy, and how renewables and energy efficiency can boost regional economy. And so with this, I will stop my not so brief review of what I saw and what I experienced when in the States.
Well, thank you, Klaus. Thank you. That was very, very good rundown of or run through of the very, very dense program we had there. Klaus, may I just ask you a follow-up question? I mean, of course, I know that being a European and being in the US now most of the time, but I know that coming from abroad, one has some preconceptions or ideas what is awaiting you. So what do you think in this trip would you say was the most going against your prejudices or your ideas, what you expected to see, and what really, really surprised you and made you basically reconsider your image of the United States or the people in the United States?
I might say that I was really amazed about all these different stakeholders, and from the NGOs to people working in the municipalities, that they are clearly aware of what the challenges are, and that they are not just aware about the challenges, and that they have already in mind, and they have their programs and their ideas and projects that they want to follow. Although it might be more difficult than in Europe, because we have some, a lot of programs, subsidies, and everything going on this. But I was really surprised that the consciousness is quite high, and not just that. As I said, there's a huge will to do something and to change things in a way to a more, let's say, renewable and sustainable future.
Great. So you yourself in Freiburg, I know you no longer work with the city, but you used to work for the city for many years, and you were actually one of the drivers for this tremendous change in Freiburg. So if you think at this, and if you think at what processes or process approaches you use in Freiburg, what do you think is really effective for enabling this kind of change that cities in the US want to get, but they are not quite there, or at least not really at the level of Freiburg? And how do you think this can be maybe transposed or adapted both to today and an American setting? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Of course I do have, but still I may just scratch the American way of life and thinking and culture at the very surface. So it's really difficult to do so. But from my little insight, and I have to say, in Freiburg we were quite lucky, because everything started in the 70s with the opposition against a nuclear power plant. This was meant to be built here in the region, and some people really started to think about alternatives, and they were quite influencing. So we had 2 institutes founded here. They went into the politics, so we have the Green Party here. So everything was developing slowly over the last 40 years. So this is not something I would recommend to start in an American city, because you are at a different level, consciousness is already there. So from my perspective, it's really important, as the cities mostly have understood what are the challenges and what are the things that we have to do, is how can we introduce these sustainable policies or projects or strategies in a way that we involve as many as stakeholders as possible, which has to do with networking. And from it's the C3, it's about communication, cooperation, and creativity. And we have to work with these 3 C's to get the responsible people within a municipality together, but as well within a city. And the first step for me is always invite people to certain topics, start talking. Mostly they don't know each other, or they have their prejudices and everything. And if we start talking to each other, then this is the first step, and everything else will follow.
You also mentioned in this very quick series of pictures about the role or the potential benefits of going from soccer towards urban sustainability. And maybe you can expand a little bit on your view on how this actually team sports connect to urban sustainability processes.
Yes. Okay, let's try that. So you see that I am a huge fan of soccer, or as we call it, football. I started doing that when I was 6. I have a coaching license. I coached young teams of younger pupils, and I played myself a lot. So I have an insight in, as I worked for municipalities for 20 years, I have on the other side an insight on soccer. And so I was always looking at both, and I saw that European soccer was developing and changing in the last 15 years tremendously. So you have 11 players in one team. And in the past, every player had his special role and nothing else. The defender has to stay back. And now, the goalkeeper was only there to catch the ball. Never mind if he really can kick a ball or not. But now everything in the last years, everything changes. So everybody is more or less involved in everything. So, and this is why soccer has changed in the way the different players are playing together, and sometimes play together without noticing and without talking to each other. So what we need there is really, we need a common understanding what our targets are. And in soccer, it's clear we want to score. And we have to understand that as well in the municipality. And we have to be aware that everybody plays his role, but everybody has different roles during the play or during a project. And we have to appreciate each role and to find structures or create structures and processes in a municipality that makes it easier for us to reach our goals and to proceed in these strategies. Because if you talk about sustainability or energy, then this is a systemic approach, an integrated approach. So we need everyone, from the city planner to the traffic planner to the real estate department. So everybody has to understand its role and play in the same direction. So this is why I like this comparison, or it's just an analogy. And partly I work with this analogy in workshops with different people, and they can then talk about their own situation when talking about soccer, so that they are not as involved in their own and don't stick too much to their own structure. And so this is why I really like that.
Great, great. Well, thank you, Klaus, for elaborating a little bit about the link between team sports. And of course, even if you don't like soccer, there's
baseball, there's basketball, yes.
Right, right. And of course, Klaus, it's a little bit of a tricky question to you, but you know, you've seen a few cities. You've also traveled to other cities in North America and before, and so. And you met people, and if you just think about the 3 cities that we visited together, or the 3 regions, and what were your impressions about the differences and the different challenges, and if you can maybe summarize these in 2 or 3 sentences per city, not in terms of ranking them, but just from your outside perspective, giving some summarized feedback on it, because I have the impression that sometimes it really helps to come from the outside and look at places.
Yeah. Oh, let's try. Let's try to do that very briefly. So first of all, when thinking about Las Vegas, everybody in Europe thinks about Las Vegas. It's only gambling, gaming, and everything. And for me, it was quite interesting how the municipality, which is not responsible for parts of Las Vegas because it's county issue, yeah. So it was first important to understand that there is the city and there's the county, and you have 2 different districts responsible for this area. But that the city, not just with the new nearly zero emission town hall or city hall, is trying to improve the situation in Las Vegas. Although, yeah, and this is for every city of the 3, traffic is a huge issue. Yeah, so for me, I live in Freiburg. I go to the city center by bicycle. I have 5 minutes to go there. So that's a totally different situation. That's a totally different world, and I have no idea how we can solve this huge mobility issue in the city. But somehow they have to try, and people have improve public transport is one. It's a nice slogan, but if you look at the amount of traffic which is going back and forth, that's quite a challenge. Maybe electric cars can be one part of the solution to reduce the air pollution, but still then we have the electric cars and we have to produce the electricity and so on. So and I can see that in Las Vegas there is this research on PV, and there are huge big PV solar power plants around. So PV will play an important role in the electricity supply for this city. Then we went to Denver, and Denver is different, especially how they, and we did not see a lot, but the Denver downtown is different to Las Vegas downtown, of course. But what we can see is if you bring back people into the city center in former abandoned parts and give them the opportunity to use public transport or the bicycle, then the city gets more and more livable. So this is what Denver did for me better than the other cities. And when we came then to Phoenix, we saw and we heard that Phoenix was starting to really build up a kind of city center, because there's no city center at all. So we were in the city center, what they call city center, and it starts now to get better as well, because university bought parts of the real estate and now is building up a kind of partly campus within the city center, so the students will come in. So I think the biggest challenges is really how can we revive the city centers, or what can we do with the city centers, so that there is life coming back to the centers, and we increase the density. And Phoenix is huge, so we went through Phoenix, so and everything to me looked the same. So that's quite challenging, how to bring back the density. On the other side, what impressed me in Phoenix was I walked around in one evening and I saw some historical displays on how Phoenix was dealing with water in the 18th and 19th century, and they were quite careful about water, and they had their water channels and everything. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves, although the story is not too long, how did we meet the challenges in the past, and take that into account, and not just all the new technologies which are not really leading us to the things that we want to have.
That's a very good point. So some solutions might be already there, or were there and then have been lost. Now, I just want to repeat my initial statement. So if you do have comments, questions, or your ideas, you just want to bring them on here. So just let us know. There's both the chat function. You can also raise a hand or indicate that you have a question. There's various buttons you can click for that on the control panel. And I hope that some of you will want to do that before we close the session. Klaus, now I'll ask you about what your experiences from Germany made you see in the US, but then also now you're back in Europe and you're also going to Asia. You told me you were in India and you go to Ukraine a lot. So what you've seen and heard and experienced in the US, did it in some way maybe spark ideas or thought processes that you can now apply in your other projects, in your work at home?
You know, traveling and meeting other people always is inspiring, and what I liked is, of course, the way when we've been to Phoenix, the way this one company is dealing with these huge car parks and PV on the roof, on car parks. This is something we, when I worked for the city of Freiburg, we tried to do that as well, because we have a lot of park and ride parking lots around the city, and we were struggling a lot. And in the end, for some reason we didn't manage to bring the PV on these parking lots. So this is still an issue. I was talking to my colleagues from the city recently. Why didn't we manage that? And as they have a campaign to increase as well PV in Freiburg, they are now thinking again on how to do that. Maybe we can have this contact back to the colleagues in Phoenix that are as well working on PV and agriculture. So have shading and have PV and grow fruits or whatever. So these are the things. But mostly what is really inspiring me is as well in these countries, in countries like India and Ukraine, and they're so different. India is so different. They are talking about smart cities, you know, because there's a 100 smart city program raised by the minister, by the President Modi, and still they don't have waste management collection in the proper way. They have no segregation of waste. Water quality is poor. So they're talking about high smart city targets, and still basic things have to function and still do not function. The same in Ukraine. The buildings in Ukraine, they are so poor. Yeah, we sometimes say these buildings, they are like Swiss cheese, and the Swiss cheese with the holes in it. Yeah, you know, they're heating the streets, and they are so desperate to retrofit these buildings, and there's no money, and it's difficult to get money and get money invested because of their so complicated legal structures, and as well the downlying economy, which is partly by this other crazy guy who is partly having a war in part of Ukraine. So they have problems. They are much more basic than the problems we have in Germany or you may have in the States. Yeah, and still I see that especially in municipalities there is the knowledge and there is the understanding that municipalities, if they are small or if they are big, and maybe the mid-sized municipalities will be one of the future topics that should be addressed, because they make up much more people than the big cities within a country. There is a lot of knowledge or understanding that we have to do something, and sometimes in these mid-sized cities it is easier to implement projects because you don't have these long decision issues, as in a 2 million, 3 million inhabitant city.
Well, thank you, Klaus. And speaking of mid-sized cities, I mean, that's not really exactly true. We have Bob Lazaro here, who's representing the Northern Virginia Regional Planning Commission. I hope I got this right. And Bob, you have a question, and I'll open your microphone if you want to ask it yourself. And if you want to, then it's open now, and you can talk to Klaus and ask your question or have your comment if you're ready.
Do you got me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, perfect.
It's nice to be on. Nevada just changed their net metering laws again to make it more consumer friendly. When you're on the ground, did you see a lot more construction activity?
If we saw that?
Yes, yeah, you saw solar panels being mounted on residential homes or commercial?
Not exactly, because as you know, we have been there 2.5 days. Yeah. So, but we discussed with some people who really were struggling for that, and which were lobbying a long time to get that down on the ground. And so they said that this will prepare and give quite a change into this issue, so that people are starting to invest into PV on rooftops more than they did before. And this was, you see, this was what happened in Germany, yeah, because we had this feed-in tariff for a long time, and we had this this regulation that renewable energies have to come first. So these two laws together, from a conservative environmental minister, it was not the Greens, it was not the Social Democrats, it was a very conservative minister. He introduced that, and this started this tremendous growth of PV in Germany. And you never know how far this might lead you.
I let Max know. I've seen your sports club Freiburg play in Freiburg. It's a beautiful stadium.
Yeah, you know, and this is one of the first stadium with a PV on top of it. I think it's 240 kilowatt peak. It's not the biggest one, of course not, but it was the first one. And talking about that, it is and there are two different types of PV plants on top of the roof. The roof is, the stadium is city owned. So the city owned the roof and provided the roof to the energy company and to the sports club, and they sold seasonal tickets and told their seasonal ticket holders, if you want to invest in a PV, give us 500 euro or 1,000 euro, we will make this PV plant. So this is a sports club supporters PV plant, and now people who have invested in that, they earn as well some money, and they show their commitment. And that's an interesting topic, how to combine sports or other things with the renewable energies or energy efficiency.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add that, of course, the communities in Las Vegas, they're also moving, and maybe at different pace, but there are things happening. And one of the pictures that you had, Klaus, showed this Nevada Energy, which is a little bit controversial company, of course, because of their role in the energy transition or not transition in Nevada. But behind that fence was actually the under construction home for the solar decathlon, where Nevada participated, or the University of Nevada, Las Vegas participated again. And I think, Klaus, do you remember, did they make a second place or something like that?
Did they?
I think they did, but they didn't win. And but it was very impressive. And their topic for this year was to make it actually not only sustainable in the sense of low energy and sustainable materials, but also ADA accessible. So that was very interesting in terms of accessibility.
Maybe, can I add something if there's no question right now?
No.
I have something that came back to my mind when we met the people from the Citizen Climate Initiative. Yeah. So going back to a going up a higher level, to a society level, because they were talking about how they are connected to Sierra Club, and they're talking about CO2 taxing, you know?
Right.
And what I find impressive is that this is happening not just in the States, this is happening in Europe too. So we have Switzerland, Sweden, and Great Britain, they have partly CO2 taxing, and now we are talking about that as well in Germany. Yeah, and there are some NGOs and there are some research institutes, they're really pushing that. And as we still don't have a new government, they are still lobbying for that, and it looks like that there is a development in Germany towards this CO2 pricing and taxing. And I'm not talking about emission trading. I'm talking about how can we put the real price on energy. Yeah, well, the real and true costs. And I think if we go and move into this direction, and the true costs of environmental damage or not are incremental part of an energy price, we will see dramatic changes. That's
true, and hopefully we'll get there in many places. Nat Zorak has a question. He's joining us from Detroit, and his question is coming back. Oh, I don't know if I unmuted you. I think you're still muted, Nat, but I unmuted you, so you can unmute yourself, and then you should be able to ask a question. I hope it works. Great, welcome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm curious. It's really good to see folks in the southwestern United States leading the charge in terms of a lot of renewables, in terms of various kinds of solar energy. But I'm wondering, one of the things that comes up in our discussions about sustainability regarding the Southwest is the fact that they haven't really figured out how to crack this urban planning problem. and that's sort of transportation, but also urban sprawl. And I was wondering if you ran into that at all, or if there were any thoughts about how people are trying to address that, because it's something that, I mean, I was in Germany earlier this year, and Germany not only does the has functional transit, but also renewables, obviously. So that's one of the things when I'm thinking about the Southwest, is that it's such a stark contrast, and I'm wondering if there was any discussion about how to address that.
So I think in Las Vegas and Phoenix, we didn't meet those people exactly who were responsible. But as I said myself before, Phoenix is such a vast city, such a huge city from my poor European perspective. And I live in Freiburg. I'm in heaven here. I have public transport 80 meters from my house. I have national railway 10 minutes from my home. I'm connected to Switzerland, France, to Paris. I'm connected to Italy. I'm connected to you see, this is like heaven, and that's something which is so much convenient, and which is really must be part of a city planning. So if you start to plan to increase or to plan new neighborhoods, we have to think in the first place about these issues. You mentioned them: public transport, reachability, bicycles, and everything. And as I said, I still see, as you, I see that as a real, that's one of the biggest challenges they have, because solar is for free. They can do that. That's just about having people invest in solar. But how to treat these urban sprawl issues, and how to get back to more dense areas, maybe not a dense city center, but decentralized centers. And I saw that this year in Vancouver, they are really trying to, on some crossroads, increase the density with some more high-rise building where the streets cross, so to increase that, so to create as well a critical mass of people living there, so that public transport is worth the while.
Yeah, and I think of course urban sprawl is different in Europe, and especially in Freiburg compared to other places. But it's of course a challenge everywhere, and meaning that we build up more terrain, more land every year, which even happens in Germany. It's even an issue in Germany because overall the population is stagnating. But we have growth in very attractive regions where there's a lot of sprawl, if we think of the Southwest, and then the East, where it's even impossible to sell homes. So there are actually similarities if we think of challenges maybe Nat has experienced or is experiencing or witnessing in Detroit, where maybe homes can't even be sold at almost zero cost. And then you have other areas such as the urban centers in the West or on the East Coast, where real estate is getting so unaffordable that people have to live very far from their workplaces, contributing to the sprawl. And so Klaus, you have time for closing words, but we have to wrap it up because we said we want to do 45 minutes and we're way past 45 minutes.
Okay.
We're almost at 50 minutes now, and definitely we don't want to extend our guests' patience here, but we can definitely continue this conversation in the next year. And especially, Klaus, if you're willing and ready to do that, that would be great. But Klaus, if you have some closing thoughts just for this year.
Just for this year, first of all, I wish you all and a peaceful and not just relaxing, but enjoyable Christmas time and a good start in the new year. So for all of us, and I would really like to engage in the future in more concrete discussions about concrete topics. So this time I was just talking about my impressions there, but we can go in some of the topics that I had worked for the city. We can go as well in detail if it comes to districts, neighborhoods, zero emission districts, which is a slogan everywhere right now. So how can we work with districts and not just with buildings, and how are they connected until to the city level? So this is something that I'm very much interested in, and especially how can we manage to exchange experience, not just between American cities, but between American and European cities. And you already said that POCACITO will move on next year. And how can we manage that from a more or less lecture kind of cooperation into really, collaboration and exchange of experience, working on concrete projects. So I have no idea right now, but this is something which I really am interested in.
Great. Well, Klaus, of course, we'll do all that we can to bring you back to the US.
I would be happy.
Great, great. And please, everybody, let us know if you want to hear more from Klaus. And we can definitely continue the conversation after the holidays in the new year. And as Klaus said, I can only second him. Happy holidays. I hope you have a great break and can relax a little bit, and a good start into the new year. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Klaus, for joining us and talking to us. It was very, very interesting. And thank you for your photos, very personal notes. So have a great break and talk to you in 2018. And goodbye, everyone.
Yeah, goodbye. Thank you very much.